One of the best things about what I get to do for a living is I get to travel around meeting remarkable people. Today on The Ripple Effect, I'm going to introduce you to one of my favorites. Welcome to The Ripple Effect. I'm Melissa Hull, your host, and we are here at the beautiful Yanks Air Museum in Chino, California. And I'm joined by my very dear friend, Stephen Memel, who is an award-winning performance mentor. So thank you, Stephen, for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, and thank you for bringing me down to this amazing place.
Isn't this pretty unique?
It is astounding.
A lot of history here.
Yeah, a
for
lot.
For sure.
A lot.
You know, one of the first things I'd like for you to do is just explain what you do. Performance mentor, and not just any performance mentor. You're an award-winning performance mentor.
Yes, and that's fun that I've won awards. I'm really excited about the awards that I've been a part of helping other people win too, which is great. I've gotten to work with Grammy Award winners, Academy Award nominees and winners, Emmy, all that. And that's in the arts, and that's where my background is. But in the last several years, I've expanded into working with CEOs of $200 million companies and helping them with performance as well. And the interesting thing is that when people hear performance, they think, oh, I'm not a performer because I don't sing or I don't dance. But if you really look at what performance is, it's really about how we do things in the world and what we bring to them when we do them, how we show up, and what's going on in our heads when we do that, and then what kind of craft do we have about what we want to perform on. So it really doesn't matter what the field of endeavor is. Performance is how you do something. And I tend to do a lot with helping people communicate, express how they show up in the world and what's going on up in here while they're doing it.
How do you do that exactly? Like, how do you pull out those qualities to really help them become effective communicators?
Well, that's a really good question. And I've often thought that God, the universe, whoever, made me really neurotic when I was emerging to my flower, because I had to solve all that stuff for myself. And I think it was that way so that I could know what other people go through and how I could help them. So in learning what comprised being able to perform at your highest level and communicate as artists do, and the rest of us do as well, in solving it for myself, I found out how I could help other people do the same thing, because it's a struggle to express our highest self. It's difficult, and it takes not just energy and passion to do it effectively. It also takes a balance of craft and skill. When those two are both operating, wow. So
when did you kind of arrive at that moment when you discovered that you had figured this out?
It does stem, like everything, and I know we'll talk about this more later, from a concept, from an idea. And that special moment happened when I was 21 years old, walking in New York past Lincoln Center, just reflecting on all the arts that I'd expressed myself in and studied. And the idea just came into my head about that there's something the same in all of them, that the mastery of an art is always comprised of these very particular skills, crafts, and thoughts. And into my head popped this concept: there is only one art. That art is you. And then the rest is just about what form are we sending this through? Are we doing it through our voice, through a guitar? Are we doing it through a spreadsheet when we're accountant? Are we doing it when we communicate as a CEO to our entire company and want to bring them to a certain place story-wise? it's always the same. And I realized at that moment that every art was the same, including the art called life.
Wow, Stephen, so at 21 years of age,
Mm-hmm.
now you were performing at Lincoln Center? Is that my
no, I was
understanding?
walking.
You were walking past. Okay.
And
But you
I
were
really
performing
felt good about doing that.
Oh my goodness, wow.
But yes, I was performing in New York.
So tell me a little bit about that. As a performer, I'd love to know more.
Well, much like I heard some of the history of the museum here, it started out as a childhood dream.
Oh, wow.
I would watch the performers when I was in grammar school, in the high school plays, and then when I was in high school, junior high, and then when I was in junior high, I watched the high school performers, and I kept going, I want to be up there. And so I just started doing it. And mentor is such a beautiful word because my greatest mentor of the arts that I ever had is, I'm still close with him, and he was my high school drama teacher. And he was an amazing man, is an amazing man, and he affected, talk about ripple effect.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Tony Award winners, but he was this teacher at a little high school. And so the idea of mentorship is you get very fortunate if you run into the right people. And I think if you've got the right heart and the right mind and you have a passion about it, those people are going to show up in your life. And Don, his name is Don Bondi, there are seminal things he taught me that influence what I do to this day.
Wow. So you always knew that you wanted to be a performer. Did you have a lot of support from your family going into the performing arts?
I did. I was very blessed. My father was an attorney, and yet he was a musician. He was a drummer, and a very fine one.
Wow.
But he made the decision, I'm going to support my family, and at that time, that's what you did. So he went and became an attorney. But they always supported me, and they did it in many different ways. They were able to help me financially also. I was very fortunate that they helped me get the training I needed. But we really do need that support, and sometimes we have to contend with families who do not give us, as you know,
Yes.
the kind of support that we really need. But I was very blessed.
Wow. Can you share with my audience some of the different productions that you were a part of?
Oh, wow. Well, it's kind of fun because being here at the Yanks Air Museum brought back some memories that I hadn't thought about in a long time. But when I was 19 years old and I was a performer at UCLA, I was studying theater at UCLA, I got to be, it was a very fortunate thing. I got to do a USO tour performing all over Southeast Asia. And so they were flying us around, and I think they're called C-20s, where they drive the tanks or people or carriers into, and I remember flying around Mount Fuji with that. And then they would also fly us to these remote bases in Huey helicopters, and we'd be sitting there hanging our feet out. And that has to be one of the most amazing experiences I ever had in my life. And it was during the evacuation of Vietnam. So our first show was on Guam for 5,000 Vietnamese refugees on top of a flatbed truck in a big open field with searchlights as the lights. I went, okay, this is fun. This is good.
Wow, what a poignant moment.
It was really powerful. It was really powerful, and I met a friend that is still one of my dearest friends in the world a few years later, but he was the accompanist, and his name is Jeffrey Silverman, and he's brilliant. He actually went on to do things like conduct Les Mis on Broadway, And the first time I ever saw Les Mis, I wasn't watching the people on stage. I was sitting in the orchestra pit watching Jeffrey conduct.
That would tell me about that experience.
Well, it's a great experience, and that's very cool. What I wanted to share was this really cool moment where the head of Hanoi University got up onto the stage, and he wanted to lead this vast field of people in a traditional song. And Jeffrey is one of these really gifted artists who can listen to you while you're singing a song that he's never heard before, and he can play it with you because he understands where it's going, which is kind of interesting because a lot we talk about is crafting story. That's crafting music. So here he was playing along with the head of Hanoi University and 5,000 people singing. And it was really, really cool. And then a praying mantis landed on the shoulder of the girl sitting next to me, and I was like, ah!
You know what, Stephen, hold that thought, because I definitely want to hear more about that. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Thank you. This is The Ripple Effect.
For more information about Stephen Memel, visit stephenmemel.com.
Welcome back to The Ripple Effect. I'm your host, Melissa Hull, and today I'm joined by Stephen Memel, my personal friend, and we are here at the beautiful Yanks Museum, Air Museum in Chino, California, and we were talking about the ripples that we make in life. And you've made so many different ripples on so many different lives, and just please share a few of the favorites.
Well, I think they're all favorites because at some level, if I don't judge them, I think what really makes us the most powerful is when we're very, very present in what we're doing, and we're very deeply involved with who we're speaking to and helping. And when we do that, we have the biggest impact and therefore create the biggest ripples. And we're not there trying to create ripples. I'm there, at least, serving. I'm there saying, I see this highest version of this person, and everything within me holds that vision and ultimately lifts that person up to the greatest expression of themselves, because that's what it is. Now, it's kind of fascinating, the center of the science of switching on, which is my system, is about this idea that there's only one art, and that art is you, and that there's a commonality in everything, story, lives, arc. And I just had to think about that. Here we are sitting in front of the P-51, which is a paradigm-shifting aircraft. When it showed up, it was solving a problem that was there. We needed to be able to maneuver faster in the air than what we'd been doing, because everybody was kind of like at a parity in what their capabilities were. And we needed to bump it up. And the changes, the concepts that gave birth to this and gave birth to the technology, like, I was just learning about this, that the old planes had a radial engine and that the P-51 has an inline engine. Now, if you're out there and you're going, I'm very mystified by that, so am I. Those are good names though. Radial engine, inline engine. And all you got to do is say them like you mean them, and they'll think you know what you're talking about. But anyway, so here's the P-51, and they needed this to happen. They needed maneuverability, they needed speed, they needed power, and this came out, and it's twice as fast, twice as powerful, twice as much firepower, and maneuvered way beyond what any plane up to that point had done. So here we were born of a concept.
Right.
And, if you will, a purpose. And then we fulfilled that, we manifested that, and it created great ripples. Now, the P51 wasn't trying to be a great ripple. It was being a P51. It was just being the fulfillment of its purpose. But by doing that solidly, it did create massive ripples. And though it became obsolete and now is in an air museum, what it did, everything after it was influenced by the creation of that. So if we look at who we are in life and the arc of our lives, we're born, we start having a vision and a purpose, and it seems as if it comes alive in and of itself, that we're born for it, with it. And we struggle to get to the place where we're manifesting this idea, this concept we have, and essentially our purpose for being. And then we go out there and in our work to fulfill it and be who we are, and express that purpose and give and serve other people. Well, if you're doing what you truly believe in, then you're making big ripples each and every time, being present with each person. You're not there to make a ripple, though maybe somewhere in the back you realize maybe, but you really don't know. Most of us have no idea the impact we're creating in the world and the lives we've affected. If you're lucky and you get to hang around long enough, people start coming back and you hear the things that happened from something you may not even remember you said, but the ripples are there. And then as life will be, there's an arc, just like a story. At some point, you become obsolete, if you will, like the P51, but what you leave in the world is this impact that echoes out like that. Yeah. And you don't even have to try to do it. That's the amazing thing. You do it whether you intend on doing it or not. So if you're going to have an effect on the world, what better idea than to have intention?
Oh, absolutely.
While you're doing it.
Yeah.
So, and even this museum itself, I was, doing my research, and I like to be prepared, right? So I was listening to how the museum came about, and it started with something that everybody can remember, because you and I talk a lot about how do you craft your story, if you're not a P51 or you haven't, taught people like I've gotten to work with, like Adam Levine and Drew Barrymore and those kinds of people. And, not everybody gets that kind of opportunity. I happen to be really lucky, but everybody understands childhood dream, right?
Absolutely.
And so when Casey Wright was talking about how this museum came about, it was the childhood dream of Charles, the father. And he used to hear the planes going over, and his uncles wore flight jackets and bomber jackets, and he just became enamored, was the word, with planes. And when he became an adult, he didn't give up his childhood dream. And that's certainly something that all of us can relate to as well, because so many of us throw away those dreams, and that's not a bad thing. Things can change, but he kept it.
Yeah.
And so he started collecting and building. And then there was a turning point, something that nobody expected, which every good story has, which is his wife said, "You got too much stuff here. Get it out if you want to keep doing this. Get some place to put it." So he got one, and that started, and then it got bigger and more planes. Yeah. And isn't that kind of strange how that happens?
It is, but it's also, in my mind, I'm thinking about all the different stories. I mean, that's how this Yanks Air Museum kind of was born. It was born out of this love of planes and the influence of family, uncles, and the intention of wanting to preserve that.
Right.
But I know that as a performance mentor, Stephen, you are always kind of excavating the stories of other people and helping them put that story out in the world.
Right.
I mean, you're so good at that. And that's one of the ripples that you leave on a daily basis. And yes, you've worked with Adam Levine and Drew Barrymore, and I feel so fortunate. I'm someone that you help too. And
that's an honor that I have.
But it's just, I'm struck by how you can take our lives and you can help us find the beauty within it.
Yeah.
And the art of switching on has been a real gift to me. And it's something that I think people need to know more about what you mean by the art of switching on.
Sure. Well, first of all, where do the stories come from? Most of us don't think our lives are important. And so we tell stories all the time, but because they're us, we don't pay attention to them as stories. And so I sit and I listen and I hear the essential elements. I go, oh my God, that's powerful. Oh my God, that's powerful. But it's fascinating to me how when Frank Wright, who's the technical guy, got on the video and he was asked, how did you figure out how to do all this craft and everything on the planes? He did not say, well, I went to technical school and I just tinkered with the planes. He said, I built a library. I built 2 libraries and I got blueprints and books. Essentially what he said is I gathered enormous amounts of reference material and studied them and looked for the structures, the underlying structures. And from those blueprints, he became experienced and telling a good story and walking in your power. It all has a structure. What I promise with the system, that the work I do, is a lot of people have had those days where they're totally on fire and they love them, they like more. And a lot of people have those days, everybody does, where you slog through mud. But we don't know exactly why one happens and why the other happens. And that's what I help people identify, because you can get to the point where it's not a matter of will you be on in your communication, in your storytelling that day. It really becomes what version of on you're going to be. It can be that consistent. But just like a plane, you've got to build from plans, from experience, from a vision, from dreams, from purpose. And I just see, I see I do actually really the beauty in everybody. Even if they make me mad, I still see the beauty. And my job is to lift that, enhance their ability to manifest it, and even to realize it themselves, because we tend in our culture, in every culture unfortunately, to think less of ourselves than we actually are. So my vision, my purpose, my dream is to help people see who they really are. And then I've been fortunate to build a lot of craft, so then I can take that person and give them the skills to communicate, to speak, to put their voices out there, to use their body. And now they're expressing, and they have a channel where they can really consistently and powerfully express that magnificence that they now experience.
Wow, that is truly, it's truly amazing that you are able to help people bring the best version of their story, their performance, if you will. If people are wanting to know more about you, Stephen, how can they find you?
Well, they can go to my website, stephenmemel.com. It's pretty
simple.
Basic. And they can contact me through that, or That's probably the best way. They can send an email.
Wonderful. I want to thank you so much for sharing with me today all the different contributions that you're making, all the ripples that you're making in the lives of so many people. And I want to thank you for joining us as well. This has been The Ripple Effect, and I'm Melissa Hull.